projects that could qualify for enhanced capital allowances, again, have a look at that website and see if any of your products look like some of the products that are on there that qualify, because there's a process that you can go through to get your product onto that list, and then your customers will be able to claim 100% first year allowances. So obviously that gives you a selling point, because if you can be telling your customers that they'll get 100% tax deduction on the assets that you're selling when they acquire them, they're more likely to choose your product as to another product that they're not going to get that on. Two other things I just wanted to cover was two other sort of tax reliefs that are available. Remediation of contaminated land. If you have to do something to a piece of land that's contaminated, provided obviously you haven't contaminated it yourself, things like removal of asbestos, you can claim an enhanced tax deduction for that. So you basically get another 50% on top of the cost that you've incurred as a tax deduction. So that's another one to watch out for when you're doing, especially when you're doing R&D and if you've got sort of a factory or a place of business that's on an old site, that's something that could also come up. And the final point on there was the renovation of business premises in disadvantaged areas. If you are setting up in a disadvantaged area, then again there's this concept of the 100% first year allowances. So if you buy a property that's in a disadvantaged area, the cost of that, you get 100% allowances up front rather than throughout the life of your project. So another thing to consider. I think that basically was everything that I wanted to cover on the tax relief. I don't know if anybody's got any specific questions.
Okay, yeah, that was very interesting. One of the things that I've found with companies is, they're kind of, they do get sort of slightly nervous about applying for these things and looking at these things. And it tends to be sectorial. I know that the Silicon Design groups around Bristol, they use this sort of system very, very well and very effectively. But there are other groups around other IT areas which don't use it at all. Do you see that being sectorial?
Yeah, we do, and you often see that there's a false expectation that it only applies to certain industries, and actually research and development enhanced deductions apply to a range of industries and things that you wouldn't expect to be doing R&D, and you think, well, that can't be doing R&D. You can actually claim it. And I think the other thing that is a bit of reticence, these things are still fairly new. Like we were talking about how going to Australia. In Australia, they've had this type of analysis for far longer than we have. And so it's quite new to us in the last, say, 10 years. And so companies sort of feel like they're getting something for free, and it's wrong. But these are there for businesses to use, and they are, abiding by the law and the way that the revenue expect you to use them. So definitely take advantage of them if you're doing R&D.
Very interested in that. I think one concern many of us would have, probably quite wrongly, is to what extent are we going to get involved in protracted negotiations and discussions with the revenue to prove that what we're doing is genuinely innovative and qualifies for research rather than saving for the next car.
Yeah,
could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I think the question was, if you do put in this claim, will the revenue come back and ask loads and loads of questions and get into huge amounts of correspondence for you to show to them that you have been doing things that meet the conditions, are innovative. And I think it's a fair concern, but the revenue are very much in the last few years working to a risk-based approach. So really trying to concentrate their efforts, because they've got staff shortages, and so they're trying to use their staff to work on high-risk cases. So I think you'll see less of a scattergun approach to these things, but they also have dedicated R&D centres now. I think the closest one to us is in Cardiff, and all research and development claims go through those centres. So then you've got people that are actually used to doing it. For instance, within Ernst and Young, we have engineers, because I'm not going to pretend to know what all of you do. I know the tax side of things. So our tax professionals and engineers work together to do the claims. Equally, for the tax authorities, they work together to assess the claims, so you get much less, much more understanding now of them of what you're doing. So I'd say that there's less chance that you'll get that protracted discussions. More likely that they might ask you about it, you'll explain it to them, and then they'll understand what's happening.
But supplementary to that is that a lot of accountants that I've spoken to have they don't understand this, and they're quite frightened of it. Is it still a specialisation really in the accountancy world?
Yes, it is a specialism because R&D is so difficult for us to understand, I guess, and it's different for every business. So we need people that understand what's going on in the business so that we can translate that into the deductions for tax, which is why we do employ those types of people that have worked in businesses and understand what's happening so that they can then translate for us into the tax fee.
Okay. Those at the back there?
Can I just check what you said for your own £100 spent by an SME, that is 175% of your tax profits.
So I think the question was just to clarify on a point that I made earlier, that for every £100 you spend on qualifying R&D activities, when you're calculating your tax, you take that amount and times it by 175%, and that is then what you take as your tax deduction. Does that make sense?
Can I just say something to back up on, because we were very successful in utilising this research funding grants, tax relief, R&D tax relief, through Ernst and Young, actually through Dave Helson's team.
I didn't ask him to come along.
The strange thing also, I think, is that the Big Four, as they are now, the Big Five, was really one of our key investors early on, insisted that we had one of the Big Four as advisors. But the team were very helpful. But we never had any problems at all. Sometimes there were delays and questions, yes, but it's quite straightforward, and a good tax consultant at any level will be able to help you.
Yeah.
It's important to get this from you. It's really very helpful in doing it.
Thanks, Jim. Sorry, the gentleman behind you.
I was going to ask about interaction with if you're receiving grants from either TSB or the SWIRGA. Does that have any impact on your ability to spend this money?
Yeah, the question was, if you receive grants, how does that impact it? For SMEs, it can impact it because it's slightly different if you're an SME or if you're a large company. And I think that the position if you're SMEs is that it would reduce the amount that you could claim as the enhanced deductions. So it's something to check when you're going through looking at it. If you have claimed grants, let whoever's looking at it know, because it is likely to reduce what you can claim.
So that's the enhanced deduction. What about so that's for the capital?
That's for the cost. So it depends on what your grant is used for. If your grant is used for the costs of what you're doing, to your activities, then it could affect the enhanced deductions. If it's used for a specific capital asset, then it could reduce the amount of capital allowances that you can get on it. So it could impact either way. The question was, if you bring in another investor, then that could impact whether you qualify as an SME or a large company, and you were just asking what that limit was. Those rules are quite complicated because of the way that it talks about SME as an enterprise, and it's the European Council's definition of enterprise. And sometimes you have to go all the way up through your family tree to work out